But the law of attraction was based on people wanting something. What do you want? Visualize it, feel as if you already have it, and it's real, and then it'll come about. The fundamental mistake in that I've noticed for myself personally, not to make that wrong, because it works, it's true, but I don't see people doing it and actually experiencing or living in a genuine state of peace and happiness. That's the distinction that I'm really making here. And why would you want things and a certain life that you think is going to make you happy when you thinking that is going to make you happy is coming from a place of not being happy? You think that's going to make you happy, and you're not happy right now because you don't have them, because of who you really believe that you are. This is where we're talking about there's levels of the mind. You've got your cognitive, conscious state that we are aware of right now, like we're talking. Then there's subconscious, emotions, unconscious identity, the ego, sense of lack, need, want, no fulfillment, always chasing after things, always striving for things. So that's the identity that we're talking about. So the work that we're coming into with this is, it's called waking up to your wholeness. So waking up to your wholeness, when you are actually living from your state, your natural true state of your wholeness, you don't want or need anything because you already have everything. And you're living in that reality. That's a real lived experience in your natural wholeness. Now the ego will say that sounds great, but that's like a fantasy. But actually the ego is a fantasy. And we're living in fantasy by thinking that we need a boyfriend or a girlfriend. We need our body to look a certain way. We need all these social standards to be met based on the social arena that we're identifying with. Because even culturally that changes. So these identities shift, but it's still basically an ego that thinks that it needs something outside of itself, thinks that it needs something to turn up a certain way eventually, and then I'm going to experience happiness. So happiness is always, let's pursue it. I mean, the pursuit of happiness, right? That's what we're basing our idea of happiness on. Happiness is our nature when we've cleared that all out of the way. That takes a real level of willingness, first and foremost, willing to be humble and recognize that what you think you know isn't really in your best interest. And then willing to look at that in every aspect of your life that it shows up in. How I view myself with people, how I view people with other people, how I view the world, the president, all these things that shift from person to person, and most of all simplifying it into what I think I want, what I think I need. Typically the house, the car, the relationship, the body, all of that. And what we're saying here is forget all that, because that's actually the thing that's getting in the way of you really experiencing your happiness and your wholeness for what it actually is. It's keeping you in a loop, which is only regurgitating the same thing and reinforcing the identity that's having it project out to be what you think it is, or what it is. So forgiveness is the only thing to be done here. This is really the work. Awareness and forgiveness, honesty in that. Let me honestly look at myself. Let me honestly look at my experience of life. Let me honestly look at how I think about myself, my thoughts. How have I managed my thoughts, which are producing my experience of life? I'm the only one that can and always have and ever will produce my experience in life. Nothing can ever do that for me. No one can ever do that for me. These are all predetermined, established beliefs being lived out, even to the extent that I think something is causing my experience is still a belief that I have chosen to live out and be identified with. It's called being a victim. And then being able to look at that honestly and then forgive yourself for that. This is a process that takes time. This isn't about like a 90-day program or training that you're going to go through, and then you've got a bunch of knowledge and concepts to be able to fool yourself into thinking that you've done some work when really you've just created more of a mask, or you've reinforced your mask and your identity even more with more information. Or I think my vision needs to be this and this and this, when that vision is coming from this identity that hasn't been healed or dealt with. How can you think that you know what your vision of the future should look like if you're still coming from an identity that is filled with limiting beliefs and basically coming from a space of denial and lack, denial of who you are in your wholeness? This is the honesty that's required, and it's showing up all over the place. In even the simple notion of like how I see this person over here who I think is a schmuck. Schmuck is a projection of mine that I've produced from my identity that I'm not willing to look at because it's unconscious and subconscious, and it's showing up in my emotions, my reactions, my judgments. When I'm willing to get real with myself about that as the only one who's producing it, this is the work of waking up to your wholeness. Why would you do it? Because if you're doing this and you're not so worried about results needing to turn out the way you think they should based on this false identity, but if you're really focused on healing your identity, healing the false identity, the ego, simply put, if you're focused only on relinquishing your identity in the ego and remembering who you are in your wholeness and clearing out all that's in the way of that, then you start to experience peace and happiness and fulfillment for what those are as your natural state of being, your natural byproduct of being alive. They're never predicated or determined or based on things needing to turn out a certain way. They're never based on circumstances or results or I need this relationship. That becomes non-existent. Your desires completely change because you're fulfilled, you're happy, and you're at peace for who you are. And then from there, the law of attraction kicks in on that level. You're then attracting things that are in the same resonance to your natural state of being. You'll be in service in such a way with people who are ready to wake up and do that work, because then you'll be able to provide examples and be an example of that in support of their process. There will be joy in that. There'll be service in that naturally. You won't have to force it. There'll be a state of abundance already, which isn't the way the world sees it, where I need to have $1 million in the bank, and maybe you will, but it won't matter. The $1 million or not won't matter, because your abundance is your state of being, in the sense that you have to give what's needed and most appropriate in the moment for everyone's benefit. That's abundance. And that's also community mindset. It's being at peace with yourself regardless of the state of the world, and being able to be at peace with that. And then you bring peace to it. And that you being that peace will teach it. So all these things, we've got it backwards in a lot of the ways that these things have been presented in transformation and self-help and personal, and a lot of spirituality too. Vision in and of itself, like the Native Americans' Vision Quest was awesome. It taught me a lot. Vision Quest is it's a purification process, purifying yourself of the ego that thinks that it knows the way things should look. So you're purifying your consciousness, you're purifying your being, you're purifying all of who you are so that vision can be revealed. And it doesn't usually show up the way that you're trying to manufacture that vision to be. Like I think, I see now my life is I'm driving a Mercedes-Benz and I've got this 4-bedroom house on 2 acres of land, and whatever that is that I think I want, which is really feeding my ego, it doesn't come up like that. You might see symbols here and there, but vision actually gets you present in the moment and being able to see things for what they are, which are neutral. And then you're able to see where you're able to be of use in a beneficial way. You're able to be directed and guided into what choices to make to where you're living your purpose out. which is also a natural, it's like breathing. It's a natural aspect of our life. So we're coming into our nature in terms of coming into our wholeness, which isn't adding on more. It's actually clearing out all the things that we think we needed and the things that we thought we were, which were taught to us by parents, religion, society, education, government, all the influencing powers that be. And most of all, we did it. Nothing happened to us, but we were around it. We chose what we chose. We continued to believe what we believed about ourselves. And that created an unconscious and a subconscious dynamic of identity, which then has us believe and think we know what we want, which is then going to produce a state or an experience of fulfillment, happiness, and peace. And it's all backwards. Because peace and happiness and fulfillment can never be conditional. It's a conflicted statement right there. I'll be at peace when the world turns out the way that I think it should be. I'll be at peace when these things turn out the way that they need to be. That's putting a condition on peace which is unconditional in its nature. So when you can actually be at peace because you've forgiven yourself, the only one to forgive, for all of the ideas and the beliefs and the perceptions of how you see things and how you experience everything, to where you can be at peace because you've made peace with all these things, for the gift that they've offered you that opportunity to be able to remember who you are and then live in peace. And then you're able to conduct yourself in a harmonious way with all of it, which then will probably have an effect. We don't know what that looks like. But there's an effect that happens because of our collective connection. But that's how real inspiration happens. Not by reading a book and let me repeat what I've memorized, but if I've lived it, if I'm really committed to myself in doing this healing work and cleaning up all of my mental stuff and emotional stuff, then the inspiration, again, is also a natural expression that happens. You don't have to try and be inspirational. You don't have to be anything. Your state of being happens naturally, like you're breathing in the moment as it needs to show up. Because you're in your wholeness. Your wholeness is intelligent and perfect in terms of what is needed in the moment. That's the only thing that needs to be done. What we thought we needed, what we thought we wanted, usually becomes not what we want or think we need at all anymore. Your desires and your attraction to things shift automatically without you trying to do that mentally. That's what we're up to.